Survived the onslaughts of Mongols, Artakides, and Romans, but it may not survive modern climate conservation. Hasankeyf is to be drowned in the projected Ilisu Reservoir. The Ilisu Power Station is one of the world's most controversial power projects.
Wahnsinn. Schau dir das an. So sehen Großprojekte aus.
When Ulrich Eichelmann visits the construction site 70 kilometers downstream from Hasankeyf, he's both overwhelmed and appalled. It's the Old Testament's Paradise River, he remarks. But now, this is hell. A few years ago, Ulrich says, he visited Ilisu village on the Tigris River. Now he's back taking a tour with the Turkish contractor. With considerable pride, the contractor shows Ulrich the gigantic conduits which will divert the river.
And when the Tigris comes, it's like, you better not be here.
Of course, nobody will be here.
Along the Tigris River, not a stone will remain unturned. A dam, 135 meters high and 2 kilometers long, will set the entire valley underwater. On this former shepherd's trail, heavy trucks are rolling. The gentle hills with their poppy fields have been blasted away. 100 villages will be inundated. 65,000 people will lose their homes.
Und dass das auch noch mit dem Staudamm.
The real mockery, Ulrich says, is that all this is labeled as climate conservation. People are driven away. Vast natural spaces are being destroyed. Hasankeyf and Mesopotamia are the cradle of our civilization. The very source of our culture is being destroyed by a modern non-culture, a reckless belief in technology. Ulrich calls it madness, a climate crime.
Das ist einfach Wahnsinn und das ist climate crimes.
Around Hasankeyf, too, construction work has already begun. The top of the minaret marks the intended water level. Everything below that, houses, gardens, caves, cemeteries, and the 900-year-old pylons of the bridge, will be submerged. Not until they reach an ancient balcony above the caves, says Ulrich, do they begin to grasp the gigantic dimensions of that reservoir. For millennia, he marvels, countless generations have been impressed by this panoramic view.
Actually, the day is starting when they are starting with the prayer at 5 o'clock.
Ulrich fears that he and his companions will be the last ones to enjoy this view. If the Turkish government has its way, they'll soon get their feet wet up here. But opposition is lively. For years, the inhabitants of the valley, together with national and international organizations, have been fighting against the threat of this project. They've been joined by numerous artists such as pop singer Tarkan and Orhan Pamuk, winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature. The singer Aynur expresses her disapproval in a song, and the famous filmmaker Fatih Akin made a video clip of it. Osman Baydemir, the mayor of neighboring Diyarbakir, a city of 2 million, wraps it up.
Ama bana göre Ilısu barajını inşa eden
In my opinion, the policy behind building the Ilisu Dam is criminal, comparable to attempted murder.
insan öldürmeye tam teşebbüs suçunu işlemektedirler. Eğer baraj
Once the reservoir is filled, he says, Hasankeyf will be underwater.
Hasankeyf boğulacaktır. Dolayısıyla hükümet
The government will have killed more than one person, and the architects of this plan will feel like murderers after the commitment of their deed.
Bana göre bir insanı öldüren kişinin yaşamış olduğu ruh hali neyse o ruh halini yaşamalıdır.
But the Turkish government wants even more. It is planning a total of 1,500 dams across the country. After that, not a single free-flowing river will remain. The Turkish government sells this as a contribution to climate conservation.
Baraj her ne kadar inşa edilmeye başlandıysa da,
Even though the dam is already under construction, we need to raise our voices until the last minute and continue our campaign to stop it.
sürdürmeye devam edeceğiz.
That's also the hope 1,000 kilometers downriver from Hasankeyf, along the Tigris in southern Iraq, because the dam's impact would not be limited to Turkey, but affect a very special region in the neighboring country. Near the city of Basra, the Tigris unites with the Euphrates River and forms the Shatt al-Arab, the River of the Arabs. Before they unite, the rivers jointly inundate a vast plain, forming the Mesopotamian marshes. Here, some 6,000 years ago, the Sumerians developed writing, the first legal system, and the basic methods of agriculture. Legend has it that this was the Garden of Eden, a paradise. Today's inhabitants are the descendants of the Sumerians, the Marsh Arabs. Like their ancestors, they build their houses of reeds on tiny islands. The swamps offer everything they need. A family's most valuable possession are their water buffalo. Some 200,000 roam freely in the channels and reed beds. There cannot be a more natural way of keeping cattle. They can swim long distances. Cattle egrets use them as ferries, sometimes without express permission. When evening falls, the buffalo return home to be fed and milked. Until the 1990s, the marshes were mostly still intact. Each spring, the two rivers swamped an area the size of Belgium. But as a revenge for the Marsh Arabs' opposition against Saddam Hussein during the First Gulf War, the dictator ordered the marshes to be dried out by huge dikes. The region became a desert, and the people had to migrate. This went on until 2003. After Saddam's capture, Iraq experienced its greatest success story, the return of the water. The people tore holes into the dams and the water could flow where it always had. Now the reeds are growing again and more people are returning. They're rebuilding their huts, raising cattle, and resuming their traditional way of life. Even the mutifs, magnificent structures made of reeds, have been rebuilt. This is where the sheiks meet to discuss public issues. Wildlife, too, has returned. Egrets, cormorants, terns, bee-eaters, and kingfishers are all back. Millions of migrant birds use the swamps to rest during their journeys from Asia to Africa and back. It's paradise regained, in Iraq of all places. But it could be lost again, this time probably forever. Life on the Tigris depends on water and on Turkey's hydro dam policy. If the Aliso Dam and other projected dams will be built, the marshes are likely to turn into desert again. The dams would hold back the vital flow of water. While Hassan Kayaf on the upper reaches would drown, this region would dry up, due to climate conservation. One person who has struggled for years to save the marshes is Azam Awash, president of Nature Iraq. He wants more areas to be swamped, but that requires more water from the Tigris.
This is a Sumerian brick. I am in the middle of the marshes of Mesopotamia. Until the 1990s, this was a water world, an Eden, if you will. Reed beds wherever you look, birds in the sky migrating, buffalo frolicking, people living one with the environment. Look at it now. It is a desert. Why is it a desert? Because water is being held upstream by dams. We have since been able to restore some of the marshes. But if Aliso Dam gets built, not only will this area continue to become a desert, the restored areas will become a desert. Dams have devastating effects downstream. Hydroelectric power is not green. Dams cause deserts.
At this time, we can still see a unique, almost forgotten world here in Mesopotamia, with people living as they have been for many generations. This is truly a Garden of Eden. And yet it seems that we are poised to eradicate the roots of our civilization in the name of progress and climate conservation. Such eco-crimes are not restricted to countries like Brazil or Turkey. They also happen in the very heart of Europe. Germany is a worldwide leader in eco-friendly electricity. 20% of Germany's electricity comes from renewable sources. In the fields of wind and solar energy, Germany takes an international lead. But in the shadow of these highly visible energy plants, another branch has been growing, almost unnoticed, but very profitable. The raw material is grown in fields: corn. All across Germany, these domes are popping up like mushrooms. Biogas plants that turn corn into energy. This is the Korin-Schorfheide Biosphere Reserve north of Berlin, a sprawling natural reserve and popular recreation area just outside Germany's capital. In the Korin Reserve, one can meet animals that have long disappeared elsewhere. Cranes, for instance, searching for food on the pastures. Around pools and in boggy meadows, lapwings are nesting and white storks find nourishment. With some luck, one may even see Germany's rarest eagle, the lesser spotted eagle. Complex protection programs are in place to help them survive. But the idyllic image belies reality. It's not new motorways or land drainage that threaten the eagle, but biogas. Corn, to be precise. Rows and rows of corn to the horizon and right up to the waterfront. Martin Flade of Brandenburg's Ministry of the Environment is in charge of the large protected areas.
Viele Arten der Feldflur, die in Getreidefeldern und so weiter vorkommen.
Martin says many species inhabiting agricultural areas like wheat fields cannot survive or reproduce where corn is planted.
Im Mai erst gepflügt, also erst abgespritzt mit Roundup, oft dann gepflügt und
Cornfields are not plowed and planted until May, after treatment with pesticides. So any species inhabiting these areas in April and May cannot breed here because their nests are destroyed. This affects ground-breeding birds like larks and lapwings, but also brown hares and amphibians.
betrifft auch einen Feldhasen zum Beispiel oder auch Amphibien, die dann vielleicht in diese Bodenbearbeitung reingeraten. Und wenn Sie diese Flächen jetzt mal sehen, die hier hinter uns sind.
Look behind us. We've got 1,000 hectares of corn here, sometimes with corn for 4 years in a row. Ecologically, this is a desert. In the heart of the reserve, stork nests are deserted. Populations of lapwings, larks, and hares are dropping dramatically. Because of green energy, the lesser spotted eagle, too, appears to have no future in Germany. Corn is closing in on its hunting grounds. Eagles cannot feed their brood with corn. This situation is now found all over Germany. The biogas boom is rife across the entire country. At the end of 2011, there were 7,000 biogas plants. 3 more are being completed every day. In recent years, the annual increase in cornfields has been 200,000 hectares, taken away from nature. The winner is agriculture. Farmers have gained a new source of income, but the calculation is not that simple. This is Schleswig-Holstein, in the very north of Germany. The stork village of Bergenhusen is surrounded by vast wetlands. This is traditional dairy land. Renate Rahn from the nearby Meggendorf runs a farm. For generations, her family has raised cattle.
Und früher war das so, dass jeder Landwirt so 10 bis 15 Hektar Acker pachten konnte.
In the past, she explains, each farmer was able to lease 10 to 15 hectares because no one owns enough land. There used to be 60 farming families, mostly working rented fields. But now the producers of biogas offer twice the price per hectare, and the dairy farmers cannot afford that. So now the cows are fed with grass, silage, and a little corn and soybeans, which have to be bought.
Ein bisschen Mais und Soja und solche Komponenten müssen wir dann zukaufen. Denn die Kühe sind dahin gezüchtet.
The cows have been bred to produce more and more milk, so they need nourishment that's rich in energy. Otherwise, the cows won't produce.
Nicht mehr zusammen. Das kann die
If we have a biogas plant here, Renate says, and we have to buy soybeans, rainforest is being cleared elsewhere to plant the soybeans we import to feed our cows.
den wir hier wieder importieren, unsere Kühe dann zu füttern.
For the dairy farmers, biogas means competition. But is biogas at least good for the country's climate balance? This is Germany's biggest biogas plant and one of the biggest worldwide. Klarsee, near the East German town of Penkun, a 45 minutes drive from the Korin-Schorfheide Nature Reserve. The plant's 20,000 megawatt output supplies 50,000 households with electricity. That's impressive. Even more impressive is the plant's appetite. Day after day, it devours 1,000 tons of corn. For a year's supply, 10 to 12,000 hectares of corn are needed. This is inefficient, as the comparison with wind energy demonstrates. For the same electricity output, a wind park requires only 400 hectares, just 4% of the land surface required for biogas. Biogas plants are land eaters. No other form of energy generation needs so much land for such a poor energy output. In the final analysis, the output is even less. If you deduct the energy used for the production of fertilizer and pesticides, for plowing and harvesting, the bottom line is nearly zero. If the climate balance also takes into account the emissions created by plowing green fields, the